What's up, MetaNerds? We finally arrive at the Imperious-class Star Destroyer. This complete breakdown will pull from every resource available, and you'll appreciate why this is one of the most beloved ships of all time. Also the most feared. Its history comes directly out of the Second Imperial Civil War, where the Pellaeon-class, what I dubbed the true successor to the ISD in the last video, played a crucial role in capturing the most coveted shipyard in the entire galaxy, the Mon Calamari Shipyards. The Fishfolk had been creating the most useful ships for the anti-imperial forces since around the time of the Exodus fleet during the Galactic Civil War. The formal fleets from the MC-90 onward, and into the Galactic Alliance with the three main capital ships, all with their characteristic forward blades. So capturing this shipyard would deprive the GA with its most important builders, but it also allows Darth Krayt to order the creation of what might be the greatest Star Destroyer the galaxy would ever see, combining the military philosophy of a Sith Emperor with the skills of Mon Calamari engineers. Be sure to check out geekygrotto.com. They're amazing alternatives to LEGO. All the parts are compatible with official LEGO products, but because they're not official, they're a lot cheaper and you get a ton more creative options. Everything from tanks, all kinds of military stuff. The Kawaii collection has all kinds of cute stuff, so the range is incredible. Vehicles in general, and the space stuff I find particularly interesting. I gotta pick up one of these soon. Be sure to check them out, 10% off, link down in the description. You see, Darth Krayt's empire was dealing with countless factions at every level, from local planetary systems to the Galactic Alliance remnant, even the Fel Empire remnant, and what was the Sith Imperial War. Two groups that both saw themselves as the true Imperials. In the Pellaeon breakdown, we saw how everything from the insane firepower packed into the smaller frame, better shielding, to fleet support with the fast frigates and its own starfighter complement made it the most feared ship at its time, and it acted as a mobile command center, able to use gravity manipulation from tractors and interdictor fields, stun or destroy with torpedo and ion barrages. It was mighty capable of locking down entire sectors. But Krayt, as a true student of military history, knew that technology must ever progress. Though it was Moff Rolf Yeg who had the idea to take the Pellaeon schematics, itself built by Kuat Drive Yards like the Star Destroyers of old, and shortly after taking over Mon Cal in 137 ABY, he would order their engineers to upgrade this Kuat design, citing he wanted to do something similar to the move from Imperial 1 to the Imperial 2 seen in the Empire of Sidious. What the Calamari were able to produce, I think, proves that they are the superior craftsfish compared to Kuat. We get a new Star Destroyer that, quote, requires a smaller crew, has better shielding, and has components that take up far less space than the original design. That crew was 6,700, which was nearly 2k less than the Pellaeon, and almost 3k less than the ISD, if we just count the officers and gunners. I won't use the inflated enlisted on board number of 27,750 against it. The Pellaeon was vaguely cited as having better shielding than previous Star Destroyers, but there's an example we'll get to later that proves that by far it was the best shielded of its lineage, which of course makes sense with the Mon Calamari creating the best shields in the game, with perhaps the best, up until this ship, being what I called the shield god, the MC-80 Liberty type. Even the ship's computers were able to be replaced with units that were smaller and had better performance, meaning all of the weapons were more accurate than before, better at calculating trajectories, and useful for its class 0.75 hyperdrive rating, which was something you would only see in the acclimators or custom-made ships of earlier generations, though to be fair, getting below class 1 was becoming more common in this era. And that armament that was being better guided does have one dramatic change. And note that when you see batteries, that means 10 of that kind of a gun. 5 heavy turbolaser batteries, so 50 heavy in total, 50 total medium turbolasers, 40 heavy ion cannons, 30 tractor beam projectors, 50 proton torpedo launch tubes, and gravity mines. You see that everything is the same from the Pellaeon, except for that it swaps out the interdiction field for those unique weapons in the form of gravity mines. This is an excellent example of lore driving the ship's stats, which makes everything feel more alive and realistic. Where the interdictor field acted like a black hole or gravity well pulling everything toward it and preventing the enemy from jumping to hyperspace, it did require the ship to be physically stationed there at all times, of course. Krayt's enemies were numerous and spread throughout the stars, of varying fleet sizes and funding, so in fighting everyone from the GA core fleet to the Roan Fel loyalists, they wanted to find a way to block hyperspace routes and pull ships back into real space. Gravity mines were magnitudes cheaper and quicker to produce than even the smallest interdiction-style vessel, so these mines created a sort of artificial black hole, a mass shadow, that would prevent most hyper-route computers from being able to calculate a jump through hyperspace. But it also would rip a ship out of hyperspace if it traveled near one. This is an aspect of the galaxy far, far away that is tucked into more obscure subplots and novels and such. But like our global satellite network or airports, the ease of global trade would be a dream to those in the past. In this galaxy, the dream was to create reliable routes through hyperspace through the creation of hyperspace buoys and clearing out objects that created mass shadows. Sometimes these would be attacked by isolationist factions, especially in the early Republic era, by those feared being dragged into Jedi and Sith wars or who just didn't want to be absorbed by the Old Republic. But for the most part, it wasn't in the interest of the Jedi, Sith, Republic, or Empire to destroy hyperlanes. Krayt, however, was fighting so many forces that he and his advisors agreed to set in place a sort of divide and conquer strategy, quarantining sectors to clear them out one at a time. We don't get exact numbers for how many of them could fit into a single Imperious, or how large these mines actually were, but there are accounts of hundreds of them being deployed in a single engagement zone. Think a whole sector most likely, not just a small orbital skirmish, and these would create an overlapping mass shadow field, trapping everyone in real space. But the Empire was confident with their ridiculous firepower and superior numbers, since they were the ones in control of the major shipyards, that it wasn't long before this threat was destroyed, or captured alive and interrogated. This technology would have been a dream for Vader and his Inquisitors, who were often left to clench their fists and peer through their Durasteel windows as their Order 66 survivor or some rebel leader slipped through the blue void of hyperspace, off to who knows where in the galaxy, effectively resetting this manhunt. These engineers of the late 130s ABY even developed a more expensive variant of the gravity mine that could target a single ship or small fleet of ships, magnetically attaching themselves to the targeted vessel. And here we do get a clue at their size. This might sound crazy, but they might not be all that larger than your standard tracker unit. Since we get the detail that as anti-Imperials encountered this new tech, after enough times they learned that the best countermeasure was either to have something that could electrify the hull and hopefully short-circuit it, or do a manned spacewalk outside of the craft and manually remove the mine. Maybe this version was smaller than the standard one, but if someone can pry it off on their own, then it can't be that big. When the battle was over, or they wanted to restore normal hyperlane travel, a simple press of the button disabled the gravity mines and removed the mass shadow. So while previous eras decided not to destroy the equivalent of railroad lines across the galaxy, Krayt's forces were not destroying rails, but installing a switch, if you will, being able to send your foes careening off course, but flipping it back on course for themselves. I love interdictors, but I feel that this is a qualitative upgrade that shows real technological progress in this era, and makes sense for Krayt's forces. We also know that it had a troop complement of 3,000 troops, which is pretty standard, with 48 Predator-class fighters, 12 Neutralizer-class bombers, and 6 Noon-class Imperial shuttles. But another detail in line with showing us that they were created for Krayt's aim of crushing all the rebellion across the galaxy, that they have a cargo capacity of 13,000 tons and consumables for 4 years, expecting long campaigns to solidify the Empire. It has 2 main engines and 4 secondary engines, while being described as larger and more powerful than its predecessor, and being more efficient with greater power production. So improvements in reactor tech as well. I mentioned in the Pellaeon video that it was likely smaller than the ISD, but we know for sure that the Imperious is larger than the Pellaeon, but still they are not going for the psychological effect of giant ships like the Super Star Destroyers. So I want to put this somewhere around 1,800 meters. Not a massive leap in size, just a great leap in the tech and efficiency of a similar sized vessel. For its operational history, we get an incredible detail at just how much more powerful the shielding was. I don't want to think about what kind of Sith torture the fish folk engineers were put through in order to ensure their compliance, but this is the true shield god, and it was made for their brutal overlords. Because there is an account that the Outer Rim 3rd Fleet, which was comprised of at least 9 fast frigates and 7 Pellaeons, were all unloading their full firepower on an Imperious, and it stood up to all of that for a while, before the shields eventually did begin to fail. Now the imps may have been able to make the fish folk comply, but these were some of the smartest people in the galaxy. Together with the Galactic Alliance Admiral Gar Stasi and his remnant forces, they hatched a plan to steal the prototype. Much like the tactics used by various companies against Sidious's empire, even governments actually, like with the Organas of Alderaan, these rebel sympathizers would leak info and make sure that vital ships were able to be easily stolen by rebel raiders. Krayt's forces believed that they were setting the trap, luring the GA Remnant forces in a mission that was similar to the Death Star 2, knowing that the Remnant would want to destroy it before it could be deployed. But the Calamari operatives made sure that Stasi and the Remnant were not able to just survive this ambush, but also escape with the Imperious prototype. though there was nearly an accidental tragedy right after this daring escape. The Imperial Knights of the Empire in Exile, those loyalists it fell and who saw Krayt as a usurper, they had learned of this super ship as well, and had weeks earlier planted explosives all throughout the ship, which would activate as soon as the Imperious' weapons came online. Neither knew of the other's missions involving the Imperious, but when word of it being stolen reached the Emperor in Exile, they immediately warned their once enemies in the Galactic Alliance. With this powerful addition, there was hope that a combined fleet between these once bitter enemies could prove strong enough to topple their shared greater threat in the form of this Sith Lord. The ship was rechristened the Alliance by Admiral Stasi, who said that it symbolized that this word was what the Sith feared the most. Which, if he understood Sith history, maybe he would have went with the word apprentice, as that's who Sith Lords actually should fear the most. But while things looked up for most of the galaxy, the Mon Calamari would suffer for their betrayal of the so-called One Sith. Many more Imperious ships would be completed, but as soon as he had what he wanted, Krayt ordered that every single Mon Calamari would be killed. Darth Krayt personally went to their capital of Coral City, summoned the council before him, and explained that in true Imperial fashion, they would be literally decimated. 10% of the Dak population would be killed in the following hours, and the rest of the population would be put into work camps, forced to produce ships for the Empire at rates never seen before. Worked to death and eventual extinction, this last generation of Mon Calamari would be made to pour their blood into their supreme technological marvel, the pinnacle of countless generations of innovators, all knowing that it would be used to enslave the rest of the galaxy. That would be the legacy of the Mon Calamari Shipyards and the people of Dak. The Quarren had been ancestral enemies of the Calamari, fighting each other in every era, from primordial times in the depths of Dak's oceans, through the Clone Wars with the Quarrens developing most of the iconic CIS ships, and now a Quarren Sith named Darth Azard would be appointed to oversee this extinction. An understanding of their culture and cruel twisting of the knife by Krayt in these final moments. Rogue Squadron would be able to rescue some in massive cargo ship migrations, sadly the latest of a sort of Exodus fleet. But with the help of a bioweapon, by the time Rogue Squadron returned weeks later, they would find that millions of dead bodies were floating in the lifeless seas of Dak, alongside billions of other dead life forms from fish to whalodons. Another fleet rescue attempt led by Stasi would be able to save millions of Mon Calamari from the labor camps, but this was only a tiny portion of what was once 27 billion inhabitants. The people of Dak barely escaped extinction, and as they tried to rebuild their population, the galaxy would spend the next decades trying to destroy or capture their greatest creation, the next-gen shield god with the torpedo power of entire fleets from the Clone Wars era that could manipulate gravity at will. That's it for its breakdown. As for behind-the-scenes facts, it made its first appearance in Legacy 2006, issue 20 back in 2008, and all these great details come from the Legacy era campaign guide and the Essential Atlas. Please hit that like button, it really is the best way to help me out. Comment your thoughts and suggestions, subscribe to see more. If you want to join the membership for just $1, you get early access to videos and some other stuff. But most important of all, remember, live by the warship, die by the warship, but hopefully before that you get evacuated by your warships. And the Force will be with you, always.